Well, hi there. It's Tuesday night, I had to think there. I thought it was Wednesday. I've been thinking that all day. How are you this evening? This is Big G. Look at life, and I thought I'd pop this up tonight. Had a bit of a crappy day. It's one of these things, you feel like you're helping somebody and they're just kind of disrespectful. So, not impressed at all. So, my mind might be somewhere else at the moment. This talk was very difficult for me because it's very close to home. It's pretty much revealing a lot about me that I would prefer wasn't, but I think to help people and to be honest, you have to kind of dig out yourself what's going on a bit, and hopefully it'll relate to someone and it may help them and deal with what's going on. What I'm wanting to look at tonight is depression and intrusive thoughts, following on from last week's, or a couple of days ago. I seem to be doing them that quick. It's with the BPD and its symptoms within itself. You also can get other complications with mental health, and obviously depression is one of the big ones, and I also suffer from what we call intrusive thoughts. So it's not too in depth, it's probably a quicker one than normal, but it's just to share certain things and to see if it would help people understand what people go through, I think, most importantly, and if someone has the symptoms they can recognise within themselves and get some help for it. Depression is a very difficult thing to look at because everything about it is quite depressing. Funnily enough, trying to look at ways of making it funnier and happier, but there just isn't, because depression is such a life-sucking experience. I think we can, in Scotland anyway, think back to Ricky Fulton, who played that character, Reverend I Am Jolly. He was a depressed minister. And if you've got a chance, go onto YouTube and have a look at him. He's absolutely hilarious, bringing this depressed minister to life and making him funny. And it was a brilliant character and really funny. It was something we always in Scotland look forward to year after year. But sadly now, Ricky Fulton passed, so obviously that has stopped. But, when you look at the ministers a day and you see the congregations, and maybe have like 20 congregations sitting in a hall, which can take 400, I'm pretty sure they're all flipping depressed, and when the numbers go down, so do the coffers. So that tithing becomes very minimal. So I'm pretty sure that they would be quite happy for people to go back in. But let's be perfectly honest with you, for people to go back into church, there need to have a heck of a change in church ministers and church people. They haven't helped themselves in the last few years with their whole attitude of anti-gay, and they would have to readdress that and look at it. Because at the end of the day, who are they to stop people going into the church? I mean, if they were to stop me, there would be a big issue. So there we go. I was actually looking online for some jokes to see, what people who have the illness felt about the illness and what it would say within the jokes, and they're actually really depressing. It's a really dark humour, and I think you can maybe only get them if you actually have depression or you are really sick. I'm going to give you a few of them because I read them and my humour is quite open, but I found them really, thinking through the joke, the connotation of it, very, very difficult to actually deal with. But I'll read them out. Again, these are written by people who have mental health issues, so it's not a case of taking the mickey out of them. They're actually taking the mickey out themselves, and I think a lot of the time revealing how they feel. One guy put up, how do you get a depressed person out of a tree? You cut the rope. It's quite a dark humour, isn't it? What do people in Apple have in common? They both hang from trees. Sometimes I get jealous when my phone dies. I kind of get all these, if I'm honest with you. The other one is just the last one to look at. There are so many things that go through my head at any one time. Sadly, a 9mm isn't one of them. I get all these jokes and I find them funny because I've been in the mental area of when, hanging from a tree and a 9mm shot to the forehead would be a grand escape. So I get them. Don't be offended by them. Again, they're written by people who do suffer. But they are quite revealing if you think them through. I mean, someone thinking of hanging from a tree, shooting themselves. I mean, people get to the point in their lives where they're so depressed and miserable that these things would be a release for them. I know none of us know what happens after death. It's based on faith. So it's like moving into the unknown. But for people who suffer at the moment, the unknown is far better than the carnage that goes on within them mentally. I've been trying to work out what would be the best analogy to explain mental health. I don't know if you've ever seen a wee film called Buried, probably about 10 so years ago now, with Ryan Reynolds, Deadpool. Well, he made a little film, and he was a traveller in Afghanistan moving products for the army, I believe, and he was abducted and they buried him alive. And I thought, that's an excellent way to help people understand what depression is. This chap was buried alive, and what he went through while he was in there. So with depression, you have this deep-seated darkness that just surrounds you, and that most of the time fills you. Your life is just dark, it's just negative, there's no light whatsoever. You feel as the character in the film felt the pressure of the soil, you feel the pressure in your own life through stress and anxiety, and sometimes get yourself so anxious, it's like you have the panic attack where breathing becomes an issue. You're so, affected by it that you're finding breath difficult. Pressure with the earth pushing down upon the soil, and for the soil got nowhere to go, you feel that weight upon yourself. You feel, when you're in that darkness, the isolation and the loneliness that comes with depression. We're all very well aware that depression is a major issue these days, but when you're in it on yourself and you watch the world around you go on, it's very, very difficult to feel that you're the only one. Some of the worst times I have was looking at the window and watching families going past, couples going past, obviously caring and loving one another, and you feel within that moment that life is moving on without you. You feel that the feelings and the pressure and the stress and the darkness is going to end your life. You've probably been through these feelings before, but every new time where the emotions become so high, it feels like it's going to be the last one. And people will say, well, you never took your life before, but you don't feel like that. You feel like this is the time. So you're always wondering what's going to happen. Within the film itself, there was a glimmer of light for the chap in the coffin. He opened up the coffin and saw some light. And that's what can happen to people with depression. Sometimes there can be days where you feel a bit better. There are days where things come into your life that you didn't think you would find enjoyment in, but you found enjoyment with them. Sadly, what happens is you start to realise again that you may be having a fun afternoon, but you know that you'll go back to being on your own, you'll go back to dealing with your thoughts, you'll go back to that blackness where life just seems empty. You'll look ahead and you'll see nothing to look forward to, nothing to enjoy. So once again, you're engulfed by that darkness, and the whole cycle starts over and over again. It's good to have light at times, but when it's completely consumed by darkness, those short times of light really don't mean anything at all. They all want you to look to the light at the end of the tunnel, but with some chronic illnesses, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. You will be consumed with an illness, and this illness will slowly take away your life until your appointed time to pass on. So people like to say there's light at the end of the tunnel. Let me trust me that a lot of the time there isn't. It's about hanging on. It's about trying to adapt how you feel and bringing in things in your life that may help you in a way. But depression is so consuming that it takes away everything from you, not just your mental energy, but also your physical energy. It can also bring phantom pains within your body, which finds you lying in bed unable to move. So it's an all-consuming illness that people think a case of, pull up your socks and you'll be fine, think positively. But it consumes you so much, and when you get into that shell of darkness, there just seems to be no way out. Depression isn't something, say, like a heart attack where it comes upon you suddenly and you rush to hospital. It's one of those quiet, slow illnesses that go unnoticed very much for a lot of the time. In fact, you probably don't notice them yourself. You just think that this is normal behaviour. So you don't realise that you're maybe pulling back from people, or you're going quiet with people. And generally people are saying to you, I think there's something up with you, maybe you should go to the doctor, but you're adamant that there's nothing wrong. So it's that type of illness, it just sneaks up on you. And then once it's got you, it's a grip that it doesn't want to let go. People think they'll never be depressed. Sadly, that isn't true. There's so much pressure now in life that depression is just ready to kick the door in and come and dine with you. Pandemic has shown this, that people are in their homes, they're living in fear, They're maybe getting anxious and stressed over bills, over mortgages, being with their partner, 24/7, drive anybody nuts, being with the kids, not being able to see friends. So depression is becoming a mindset for so many people these days that it is becoming a major issue. I mean, thinking to normal life without a pandemic, work stresses, targets to reach, being at work on time, dealing with colleagues, dealing with managers who really are Zoomers. These are stressful situations. And what happens in our lives is these situations go on top of each other. It's like building bricks till you get to the point where you're at the top and you can't cope. Home life can be stressful. Maybe you've got a new baby. The honeymoon period with a child is beautiful, but when they're up during the night 3 or 4 times, and even if you're not up, when your partner's jumping into bed, it can disturb your sleep, so you find yourself in the morning tired and cranky. Maybe you've went through the divorce of your parents, whether at any age, it can be very difficult. You find yourself siding with one over the other. Maybe the father's had an affair, so you actually have a lot of resentment towards him and anger. Maybe you have a teenage son, maybe he's starting to go about with the wrong crowd, and his attitude's changing, the way he is as a character is changing. He starts to get thin, so you're suspecting they're drugs, so that whole worry kicks in there. Maybe you've got a daughter who grew up reading magazines about the perfect figure, and she now looks at herself in the mirror and just feels fat, so she's dealing with anorexia. How do you support her? How do you watch your child, the weight fall off and become a skeleton? The worry and fear of what can be at the end of that sits in your mind. Or maybe your partner doesn't trust you, maybe it's something like that. She's heard rumours from your pals of Christmas parties and exchanges that you had, and she no longer trusts you, and it's causing big tension within the marriage. So all these things, I was going to call them little things, but they're actually quite big things, and when they stack together, it becomes this huge emotional roller coaster that you're trying to manoeuvre through, and you just can't seem to sort out little things here and there, and it all becomes a major issue, and it builds up to the point that some people have breakdowns, some people just go depressed and quite quietly. So it becomes too much. What you once were able to cope with, you no longer can. And, how do you deal with that while holding down jobs and relationships and loving your kids? It's terrible when everything becomes on top of you. And sadly, we were at 1 in 4 would deal with mental illnesses just before the pandemic, and they're looking at 1 in 3 at the moment. I made a quote in my last video about someone saying it is a shadow pandemic. It's going kind of unnoticed because of the fear over the coronavirus, but it's a major issue, and it's really kind of hitting every home at the moment. You'll be glad to hear, though, that with regards to depression, that it's not racist, homophobic, in any manner. Means it's completely multicultural. It will come for you regardless of size, colour, where you live, who your tribe is. It's something that's is part of society because of the stress and strains that we're all open to becoming depressed. TVs and medias like to tell us the lifestyles that we should have, and when we can't seem to get that lifestyle, jealousy can kick in, depression can kick in. So we're living in a world, particularly in the West, where depression is an easy thing to fall into, an easy trap that you fall into in life, and it slowly builds so that you don't see it, but its impact is enormous. It doesn't just affect you who are dealing with it, it affects your partner, your kids, your families. It can change your life. I was in hospital actually getting an endoscopy done, and this girl was telling me that her daughter and son-in-law were having to come home, and they went out to Canada. They had good jobs, but the fella started to feel stressed at work, and over the course of 6 months he developed depression to the point that he wouldn't leave the house, he wouldn't leave his bed, and they had to pack their jobs in and come home so that he could get good medical care. So it just shows you when life looks like it's blooming, that depression's there to darken that cloud, to blacken that flower, and they'd completely destroy your existence to a degree. And obviously left unmanaged, unchecked, it can become an issue to the point of someone doesn't want to be here. There is 5 signs that someone may be dealing with depression, and I encourage you to think these through and to look at your friends and look at particularly your families. Oh, it's harder at the moment, the pandemic, but you can hear it in their voices as well. So look out for these things, because these are big flashing indicators that someone is struggling. The first one is long-lasting sadness. When someone who seems happy and perky, it's easy to notice when they start to go down and they feel quite miserable. Every time you talk to them, they're negative. They get to the point where they don't want to talk to you. They'll get to the point where they stop going out and meeting people, stop going to events where they used to go to, so their whole character changes. And their demeanour, the way they walk, the way they talk, it just all hinges on sadness, someone who's down and someone who's depressed. That's probably one of the main things to look for, particularly with someone who's a bubbly character. And once you see past masks, because a lot of people like us wear a mask in public so that people don't probe us, look for the mask, look for the hiding of the character, and also the sadness there. Extreme changes in mood can also highlight the fact that someone's depressed. They can be chirpy and happy in the morning, come the afternoon they can be quite sad and miserable. Again, changes in behaviour, going out, staying in, these are indicators that someone's mood has changed, and where they once loved to be around people, they now prefer to be home alone. Social withdrawal is a massive one. I got invited to a wedding many years ago now, actually, and I felt quite good getting up. I was looking forward to it. Great meal. I always go for a free meal. Come the afternoon, I felt the pressure of so many people there, the expectations of people that you're having to live up to, talking with people, laughing with people, with that whole thought, that social exchange I just couldn't deal with, and I didn't go. I just stayed in my bed all day. The anxiety and stress of having to go and perform, I just couldn't do it. Another one is dramatic changes in eating or sleeping patterns. People who are depressed find it difficult to sleep. They become kind of nocturnal. They'll sleep during the day, and at night they'll be up all night watching crap TV and eating crap stuff as well. But that's a big sign that someone is dealing with depression. When they go down, they have to sleep there and then instead of hanging off to bedtime. Eating habits as well. People get so depressed and fed up that what's the point eating? Putting nutrition in yourself because you don't want to be around, you don't want to be on the planet. You're feeling like life is over for you. You might be considering checking out your life, so eating becomes something that's not really that important to you. So that's one thing to look for. Excessive paranoia, worry and anxiety, these are the obvious things. Anxiety being the biggest one. People completely floored by anxiety. My ex-wife, she used to get anxiety attacks where her breathing went funny. She was gasping for air, had to take her to the hospital, put her on, I think it was oxygen. So people get so stressed about doing what would have been normal things that it becomes a serious problem. And what really happens from that is if they feel they're going to be anxious about going out and even consider going out, they'll just not go out at all. I know one chap, I was in a church and his wife had never left their bedroom for 3 years. That must be hellish. But in her mind, she feels unmovable. She does not want to be around people. She doesn't want to change what she feels comfy. To her, security is the bed and the walls. So, I mean, it can be that crippling that your life just becomes non-existent. There's no quality to it and there's no quantity to it. What actually happens is your day just seems to stretch, and then you start that whole sleeping during the day, up during the night. So when you're surrounded by darkness outside, it can be hard as well for you. Sunlight's a great thing to help you. But when you're sleeping all day, so you're in the dark, and you're up all night, you're in the dark, it becomes completely draining. One thing that the world and society has to realise, that depression is real, is part of human nature. It's a debilitating illness, as we've seen. And it's also a serious condition. A lot of us like to apologise, I'm sorry I was so down and treated you badly, but it's a serious illness and it needs to be taken serious. People need to start looking at it as, right, okay, this really is affecting someone's life. And really, sadly, people only see that when they're dealing with it themselves or they see it in a loved one. Sometimes it can be harder when you see it in a loved one because you so much want to help them, but they're in such a dark place that you just can't reach them. So you're spending your life alone because your partner can't have conversations, exchanges, and won't leave the home. It can be a complete minefield, and it completely affects the entire family. If you have someone in your life that you see mood changing, patterns changing, they're tired a lot, or they just look down, then that's signs that there could be an issue. And I would say get them help. You know, at the moment it's bloody ridiculous trying to get an appointment at the doctors, but you can phone them, and I encourage you to do that. Sometimes we can leave it too late, and we know what the results of that can be. But you know, the best way to help someone that you can, apart from medical profession, would be listen to someone. Really listen to them. Do not keep chirping in with positive ideas. Do not keep chirping in but however. Just listen to them. Let them talk. Let them get it out. And validate what they're saying. You know, validate how they feel. Yes, you're feeling rotten. Yes, you're feeling depressed. You know, don't say, oh, but you've nothing to be depressed for, or look on the bright side. You know, just listen. Just sit. Just listen. Don't say a word unless they ask you to. And when you do, don't have a go at them. You know, just validate what they're saying, tell them you understand, and tell them you agree with how they're feeling. And from there, you'll build up confidence. And that'll really help move forward to get someone, you know, into help. And that's what really we should be doing. So depression is one thing in mental health. The other thing that comes, particularly with my borderline personality disorder, is a thing called intrusive thoughts. And I've classed it also with OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. These two are little beasts that I don't think anyone mentally should have to go through alone. They are crippling, they are vile, disgusting, and they're evil illnesses that really want to throw things into your mind that shouldn't be there to destroy you. This intrusive thoughts wants to push you as far as possible into taking your life. You may think that's over exaggeration. I've been there, trust me. When certain things go through your mind, you feel, I can't deal with this. The best way is to go. So these two are evil little bastards, that's the only way to put it. OCD has always been seen to have a funny side, hasn't it? You know, we think of the people who just can't stop cleaning their houses. I watched a documentary about a woman who, she walked around with a white suit on and a mask every day in her home, cleaning constantly. Someone visited, they had to take their shoes off, and they had to wear those white, like, glove feet things. She wouldn't allow them to sit on the couch unless there was a towel under them. So, I mean, this is OCD to the extreme. She looked ridiculous. The home was actually beautiful, and the daughter had the same problem as well. I mean, she wouldn't even sleep in her own bed. She slept in her mirrors because she didn't want to crease the quilt. These people, it sounds funny, but it takes over your life, and you cannot help yourself to stop cleaning. Now, I've suffered a bit from that. I have the problem with changing the living room. My living room gets changed, I kid you not, 5 to 6 times a day. I suppose I'm like that Chinese thing. Things have to be lined up and in the right place, and it drives me mental. It's got that bad that all my furniture's falling apart. See, I didn't have the common sense to move stuff out and then move it. I know I'm going to be moving it again, so I just lift it up and shift it. And no, my expensive furniture at B&M is falling apart, and it's because I can't stop myself. The other one is there was a Whitechapel, the TV series, which I really enjoyed, but the main cop had a problem with the lock things. I don't know if you've heard, there's people who, if they're going out, they have to check their locks continually. So they'll maybe turn the key 5 times, go to the window, turn its keys 5 times, they go around the entire house, and then they start again. This character in Whitechapel had that, where he was continually checking locks, and he actually got caught having a bevy at work. And the guy said, what are you doing that for? He said, it's either this, drinking alcohol, or checking every lock and taking an hour to get out of the office. It was hilarious. But there's people who are like that, who can't leave the home for fear that the home's unprotected. And if they can get them out the home, they have checked their lock so many times, it's driving these people crazy, but they cannot stop themselves. When you have OCD and intrusive thoughts, it heightens the emotions. It makes you obsessive over anything that comes into the mind, any thought, any image, any urge. It becomes obsessive, and you just can't take your mind off it. There's a lot of way of deflecting from a major issue, but that takes a long time. So you're sitting with this stuff, and sometimes it's quite vile that you're thinking, things that you shouldn't, things that if you have thought it should just really float out. But because you're obsessive, the thought, the image, the urge just takes over, and it's pushing you to react. I was on Wikipedia, and this is how it described intrusive thoughts. It says this: intrusive thoughts are an unwelcome, involuntary thought, image, or unpleasant idea that may become an obsession, is upsetting or distressing, and can feel difficult to manage or eliminate. The thoughts may become paralysing and anxiety producing. Intrusive thoughts, urges, and images of inappropriate things at inappropriate times, and generally have aggressive sexual or religious, don't know what that is, or religious thoughts. Intrusive thoughts combined with OCD actually increases the frequency, which actually takes away the ability at times that you have to actually stop them. And the more you try to suppress the thoughts and the images, it actually increases the intensity of them. So you're actually fighting your own mind to try and stop these thoughts. But because you attach obsession to them, that you're trying to work it through and from every angle why you've thought it, when really what you should have done is just thought it and let it go. But someone with intrusive thoughts and OCD don't have that ability. There are three groupings for intrusive thoughts: aggression, sexual, and religious. And these things really pop into your life, pretty much all during the day, and can pop up in situations where they are very much unwelcome, and it's so detracting. It's so difficult to maintain if you're in a conversation when these things are running riot. I was talking to a chap who was a church leader years ago, and we were having this great theological discussion, and it was going quite well. He was actually believing what we were saying, and I got this thought just popped out of my head: I wonder what it'd be like to kiss him. I spent the next 30 minutes in a conversation, but also in my mind saying to myself, I wonder what it's like to kiss him. And then you start the whole obsession. Why did I think that? Do I find him attractive? Do I like him because he's a nice person, or do I like him because I'm sexually attracted to him? And this shit just goes round your mind continually, and you cannot stop it. It just has its own projection and keeps going for it. The only time it stops is when you've actually walked away and maybe had 2 or 3 days to let it go out your mind. So I'm standing in that situation thinking that, and then the urge comes. Well, first of all, you get the image of what it would be like, so in your mind you're actually kissing them, and then the urge comes to actually do it. I've actually had to walk away from speaking to people because the urge was so strong. I wasn't even sure I could stop myself planting my lips on them, so it wouldn't have went doing well. The fact that they were a church leader, and the majority of them didn't like gays anyway, so I'd have been in trouble. But that's the sort of sexual and religious things working together. It's a religious figure, and you have the thought of kissing them, and the whole process of why you thought that, instead of just accepting it and letting it go, is so intrusive. It's so difficult to deal with. I met a church leader, one in Falkirk there in McDonald's, and they had been through a course with the church which was utter crap. Everything within their book was it wasn't according to the pattern at all. It was according to whoever was in charge. Anyway, I was in McDonald's, and he started to get a bit cheeky with me, and so I'm within my mind had this scenario. We've seen it in films, where they go through something, then it was just a dream. Anyway, my mind was working on how to assault this guy. In my mind, as he's talking, I'll have his ears, have him by the ears, battering his head off the table 2 or 3 times, dragging him by his hair, well, may have been a toupee, I'm not quite sure, outside, and then just literally kicking the shit at him. And that stuff just sits in your mind, and you cannot concentrate on conversations, you cannot concentrate on anything else other than this image and the urge to hurt the guy. My urge to hurt the guy, he will never know because I didn't, but I really wanted to leather this guy all over McDonald's, throw him through the drive-through window, But when that takes over, it's like you need to get out of the situation because the urge to hurt is massive. And within your own mind, you don't even know whether you're going to do it or not. So it's like that 50-50. If I don't go, I could hurt the guy. And I did. I had to leave. And it was a complete plonker. But anyway, couldn't have leather him. I'd end up in jail. I think the key words to learn from the Wikipedia that I read you on intrusive thoughts and OCD is we can't eliminate the thought. It's not a case of letting it go. The thoughts can become paralysing to the point that you can't think of anything else. And as you're paralysed with thought, if they're thoughts of a sexual nature, you feel vile, disgusting, and like someone who shouldn't be on the planet. These aren't just thoughts. They throw up images of actually doing something with someone which repel you, but the image is there. And they can push you that hard that you actually have the urge to act out the image. Now, in certain areas that might be appropriate, and in other areas it most definitely isn't, depending on who you're with and who you're surrounded by. And these urges are something that you can't let go. The only thing you really can do is walk away to save themselves. And it's the increase in intensity that they just seem to, you think of one way to get them out of your mind and something else will come in. And it just seems you get yourself anxious and stressed. Your levels of stress are through the roof. Why am I thinking this? Why can't I let it go? Why is it obsessive? Why is it taking over? And it just brings complete exhaustion mentally and physically. It's absolutely ridiculous the things you go through. I used to go to church with a guy, and nice fella, talked to him, but one day I had this thing, it starts off with, is he a nice fella because you're a nice fella as a Christian? Is he a nice fella because you're sexually attracted to them? So that shit all started, I'm attracted to him. What if I go and speak to him? I have the urge to kiss him. I started to have images of me and him together. I started to have urges just to go up and touch him in the church, whether that be kissing or fondling. Your mind just becomes obsessive, and it's telling you that you're doing things you're not even actually done. I spend all week trying to get this person out of my mind. In my mind, I attach myself to them. So in my mind, it's like a marriage. It's like a union. So I'm spending the week trying to wonder if the person will allow me to do this or buy this. You become obsessive about their safety, about what they're doing in their life. You become jealous that you're not part of their life. And this is just all in the mind. It's not a proper physical relationship. It's all in your mind. And then as a Christian, you're wondering, well, I shouldn't be thinking this about somebody. And then I'm thinking, well, I'm gay anyway. But then I have to get rid of these thoughts because that chap's not in my life. It's ridiculous to be obsessive over someone that you barely talk to, but your mind is telling you that you're with this person and you have to live in obedience to them. And it just becomes ridiculous. There's been times where I've had the urge to go and walk around someone's home to see if they're in, to see what they're up to be jealous of why I'm not part of their life, to the point of chapping their door to tell them how I feel. Completely inappropriate, but it all goes through the mind. And the thoughts are one thing. The images are horrific, and the urges are hellish, because there are times it pushes you to do something, to get rid of the emotion, or to prove to yourself that you're not one thing or another. The sexual urges are all form around fondling, kissing, touching. I used to be in churches where I wanted to touch somebody to see if they turned me on, if I was attracted to them. And that's fucking brutal. You're sitting with somebody that you didn't even like, and it's, well, I wonder if I'm this, that, and the next thing. So you think, oh, just touch them and see. Imagine what would happen to you, being in jail. But your mind is pushing you to try this shit. I mean, people keep saying to me, oh, you need to know when to draw the line in life, but I have scrubbed at that line and moved it so many times that I no longer know what the truth is, because the images and the thoughts and the urges are so powerful that they just take over. People say you can't control them. Well, maybe you can 80% of the time, but just think of the damage that you would do in the 20% of the time when you lost control. I did so many different things, things that I certainly wouldn't admit to, but it drives you mad, and at times it drives you to trying something, particularly with regards to homosexuality. I was driven to the point that I had to have sex with men just to see what it was like. And within the Christian circle, that's something that's completely taboo, but I couldn't stop myself. You get the thought, you get the images, and then you get the urges, and I've acted on the urges. So I certainly know I don't seem to be wanted by the church. I wonder why. That's the thing about intrusive thoughts. Every thought becomes a captive. It's locked up, it's changed, it's guarded, and you spend your time picking apart why you thought it, why it was there in the first place, the connotations of it. Some of the sexual stuff are actually quite perverse, so you spend your time wondering, am I that person? Having been abused as a child, I have the thought that having been abused, I'll become an abuser. Something that's never been acted on, and thoughts that are vile to even think about. I struggled with them so much that I've tried to take my life a few times because of them. But, you know, it's there. You think, you know, you're like the person who done it to you, so you'll end up doing what they did. Totally, for a lot of people, unrealistic ideas. I mean, it just doesn't happen. But it's not so much what happens, it's how you think of yourself. And when you see yourself in that light, it's vile, disgusting, and the worst things that you could be in life. And that stuff drives you mental. Even though they're you've never done anything or acted on them, the fact that they are there, it's just repellent to yourself. People love to tell you, oh, it's only thoughts, it's only emotions. Well, I'd love to tell them my illness and tell them how you deal with that and how you live your life while dealing with this process of thoughts. And I think also with the fact when they start to admit that the mind is a thing that's difficult to understand and they don't really get it yet. Dementia. Does that mean that we throw dementia patients in the jail because of the things that they do? I worked in a home and this woman was attacked everybody. Do you jail her? No, obviously you don't. The dementia just takes away the capacity for understanding. And when you're sick mentally with, you know, intrusive thoughts, with aggression and urges, it's difficult to stop. And if we take it in the same line of dementia, then the brain is in charge and the brain will do what it wants to do. And that's how we should start looking at these things and start giving better help and better treatment. Intrusive thoughts, I was going to say I wouldn't wish him my worst enemy. I actually would, one guy in particular. But it's something that it's difficult to explain because it affects you in every way. And the sexual and aggressive stuff is two of the worst that I have. And coping with that day after day on top of the suffering of BPD, your mind is just at war with itself. There's not a let up, there's not a let down. I'm on so many different medications, and that's just to tire me out really, because there's no cure for BPD. So you're on mood stabilisers for your mood swings, you're on antidepressants, you're on antipsychotics because you're a fucking nutter. So, you know, I've taken everything I can, and still the thoughts are there, still they go around with the intensity, with the evilness, the aggression, and it's people say it's only in the mind, it's in the mind, but my mind is fucking ill, and dealing with that and living with that is not something that I think anyone should live with. But sadly, there are so many of us who are living with this day to day, and because it isn't seen, we do not get the help. Pain and suffering is something that's in everybody's life. It's not just me, not BPD. It's everyone, whatever mental health it is, whatever it's heart attacks, it's the viruses, strokes. There's so many different diseases these days and disfigurements. So we're all dealing with something. And the human consciousness, you know, why? What's the point in this? You know, all this pain is just unsufferable that we go through. But I believe in a faith and I believe in a God who went through it for us. Jesus himself came to earth and he was attacked emotionally, psychologically, physically, mentally. In every way he had the endurance to endure the worst things that society could throw at him. And this was 2,000 years ago. So he went through so much pain, so much suffering. And if I had been in his shoes, I wouldn't have come to begin with. There's a part in scripture where it says that Jesus said, I can call down thousands of angels to deal with the people who were persecuting him. Oh, I'd have called them. I'd have eradicated the world. But he suffered. There's a verse that came to mind. It was Isaiah 53, verse 11. Now, he suffered in every way, and it didn't seem to make any sense. But it says in Isaiah, when he sees all that is accomplished, by his anguish he will be satisfied. His anguish was for a reason, to bring peace and reconciliation with God back into our lives, to take away the wrongs that we have done and to make us right with God. And that's what his suffering, that's what he came for, and the suffering, and that's what it accomplished. So the reason for his suffering was to bring freedom to us. I read this not so long ago, and it really spoke to me at a time when I was really struggling. It says this: God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pain. It is his megaphone to raise a deaf world. When we are surrounded with so much, you know, families, homes, our pets, our cars, our jobs, we live under safe roofs, we have heating. It's very difficult to see God because we have all this goodness and we just enjoy it rather than realising that it's because of someone that we have it. most people, when suffering comes along, whether it's them or whether they're watching something on TV, their instant reaction is hatred. And it's probably one of the first times that they actually realise that they're looking to God, because they assume that the pain and suffering is from him. And as we suffer, the more we hate them, generally within our lives. But the one thing true of suffering is that he gets our attention. It's when we start to say, well, what's going on? Why is he allowing this? Why are you allowing this to my neighbour? Why am I suffering so much? It's so much injustice. Why does it? I ask you, the next time you go through that experience, that thought process, or when something happens to you and you think that wasn't fair, and you wonder, why would a loving God create so much misery? Maybe he's trying to say something to you. Maybe he's talking to you. Now, I'm not going to say to you it's a pleasant way of talking to somebody at all, having been through every shit I think he can shove at me. But I do believe he's shouting at people to say that real peace, real love, real contentance is actually in him. It's not in the material existence that we have. It's found in him alone. So yes, suffering is hellish, brutal and hard, and very unjust. And it seems other people who deserve the worst actually got off the base. But think through the next time that you suffer and wonder what he's saying. Have a look around your life. Have a look at the people you have. What is he saying about it? Some people have been through difficult times, and they've saw the love and the generosity of a family. So that taught them that their family adored them. So maybe instead of looking at the pain for what it is, look and see the goodness that comes from it. And most importantly, that there is a God who's speaking to you. Life isn't easy. I find it horrifically hard dealing with mental health illnesses. Now this, full of wind, and this diabetes crap. I would say one thing about diabetes. I've had it 3-4 months now, and I've been shitting for Scotland and farting for the West Indies. It's absolutely ridiculous. The farts are reeking. When you're in bed and you do that fart and you just lift up the cover to see if it was a stinker. These things are humming. So if you get diabetes, you watch your bowels. So that's the third one in the series that I've done. I'm going to look at other stuff. If you have any ideas, let me know. I'm going to do one on the next one-off special, looking at the gimmicks of the church, exposing them for what they really are, and just seeing that they've got it wrong, basically. So bear with that one if you're not into Christian stuff. Try and make it funny, because there's a lot of crap in there. So that'll be popped up in due course. If there's things you would want me to talk about or look at, then let me know. I'm going to try and maybe do some on the move, look at churches and give you ideas of the pros and cons of the churches in Falkirk. That might be an idea if you're considering church. The pitfalls, there's plenty of them. Anyway, take care of yourself. I hope this made sense. I found this very difficult. I haven't enjoyed recording it at all, but that's it done. It's out there. I'm not sure it'll help anybody, but if it helps somebody in some sense, then it's been good for some of me. Remember, John 3:16, Romans 10:9, the ways to the Lord. Take care, God bless, have a good night.